In the early 20th century, one man stood at the crossroads of science and the supernatural, Jack Parsons. To some, he was a brilliant pioneer of modern rocketry, a founding member of what would become NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. To others, he was something far stranger, a devoted occultist, obsessed with ritual magic and forbidden knowledge. By day, Parsons worked with explosive fuels, helping humanity inch closer to the stars. By night, he pursued a different kind of ascent, one rooted in ancient mysticism and esoteric traditions. He was deeply influenced by the teachings of Aleister Crowley, a controversial figure who preached the philosophy of Thelema. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Parsons didn't just study these ideas, he lived them. He joined Crowley's magical order, the Ordo Templi Orientis, or OTO, and quickly rose through its ranks. But this wasn't casual experimentation. Parsons believed that through ritual, he could tap into unseen forces, alter reality, and even summon higher beings. To his colleagues, this double life was baffling. How could one of America's brightest scientific minds also be performing arcane ceremonies under candlelight? But to Parsons, there was no contradiction. Science and magic were simply two paths to the same truth, understanding the hidden mechanics of the universe. And as his obsession deepened, so did the strangeness surrounding his life. Parsons' home in Pasadena, known as the Parsonage, became a hub for the bizarre and the unconventional. It wasn't just a house, it was a gathering place for artists, freethinkers, and occult practitioners. The environment was chaotic, experimental, and, to outsiders, deeply unsettling. Inside those walls, rituals were not rare occurrences, they were routine. Parsons conducted ceremonies based on Crowley's teachings, often involving symbolic invocations, altered states of consciousness, and complex magical formulas. These weren't theatrical acts. Parsons believed they had real, tangible effects on the world. The parsonage attracted an unusual crowd, including a young man named L. Ron Hubbard. At the time, Hubbard was just a struggling writer, but he quickly became entangled in Parsons' world of ritual magic. Together, they would participate in ceremonies that blurred the line between mysticism and madness. One of their shared goals? To invoke a divine feminine entity, an embodiment of cosmic power that Parsons believed would change humanity's future. Neighbors reported strange noises, chanting, and late-night gatherings. Rumors spread. To some, Parsons was a genius ahead of his time. To others, he was playing with forces he couldn't possibly understand. But the most infamous ritual was yet to come, a series of ceremonies that would push Parsons further into the unknown than ever before. In 1946, Parsons embarked on what would become his most infamous magical operation, the Babalon Working. This was not a simple ritual. It was an elaborate, multi-step process designed to summon a spiritual entity known as Babalon. In Thelemic belief, Babalon represents divine feminine power, freedom, and raw creative force. Parsons believed that bringing this entity into the physical world would usher in a new era for humanity. Working alongside Hubbard, Parsons began the ritual in the California desert. The ceremonies involved chants, invocations, and symbolic acts meant to open a gateway between worlds. Parsons claimed to experience visions, intense, otherworldly encounters that convinced him the ritual was working. Then something strange happened. Shortly after completing part of the ritual, Parsons met a woman named Marjorie Cameron. He became convinced that she was the physical manifestation of Babalon, the very entity he had been trying to summon. To Parsons, this wasn't coincidence. It was proof. But not everyone agreed. Even Aleister Crowley himself reportedly criticized the operation, calling it misguided and reckless. Crowley believed Parsons was in over his head, dabbling in forces that required far greater discipline and control. Still, Parsons pressed on, fully committed to his path, regardless of the risks. As Parsons' life became more entwined with the occult, his personal and professional world began to unravel. His partnership with Hubbard took a dark turn. The two men, along with Cameron, became involved in a business venture, one that quickly spiraled into betrayal. Hubbard allegedly ran off with a significant portion of Parsons' money, leaving him financially devastated. This betrayal shook Parsons deeply. It wasn't just about money, It was about trust, loyalty, and the collapse of a shared vision. At the same time, Parsons' reputation in the scientific community suffered. His involvement in occult practices made him a controversial figure, especially during an era marked by suspicion and political tension. He lost security clearance and faced increasing scrutiny. Despite everything, Parsons didn't abandon his beliefs. If anything, he became more committed, convinced that his path, no matter how chaotic, was leading him toward a greater truth. But the combination of financial hardship, professional decline, and intense spiritual pursuits created a volatile situation. Parsons was isolated, misunderstood, and walking a razor's edge between brilliance and self-destruction. And then came the event that would seal his legacy and mystery. In 1952, Jack Parsons died in an explosion at his home laboratory. Officially, it was ruled an accident, a mishandling of chemicals during an experiment. But given Parsons' history, many found that explanation too simple. This was a man who had spent years working with explosives. He was not inexperienced, so how could such a fatal mistake happen? Speculation quickly spread. Some believed it truly was a tragic accident, a momentary lapse with deadly consequences. Others suspected something more deliberate. There were whispers of suicide fueled by his declining fortunes and turbulent life. And then there were the more mysterious theories. Given Parsons' deep involvement in ritual magic, some wondered if his death was connected to his occult practices. Had he pushed too far? Opened something he couldn't close? Or was it all coincidence, a tragic end to a chaotic life? To this day, no theory has been definitively proven. What remains is the legacy of a man who refused to see boundaries between science and the supernatural. Jack Parsons helped lay the foundation for humanity's journey into space, while simultaneously exploring realms far less understood. His life is a reminder that the pursuit of knowledge can take many forms, some illuminating and others deeply unsettling. And perhaps the strangest part of all is how close those two paths can sometimes be.